If you have ADHD and your mornings often feel chaotic, foggy, or like your brain is immediately looking for something stimulating, there's a good reason for that. One of the most overlooked ADHD tools is what you do in the first hour after waking up. And in this video, I'm going to explain why movement in the morning can make such a big difference for focus, mood, and emotional regulation. Why mornings are often especially hard for ADHD brains, how delayed circadian rhythm plays into that, and how to make movement automatic instead of relying on motivation. Welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Dr. Dan Sullivan. I'm a licensed naturopathic medical doctor, a certified functional medicine practitioner, and I also have ADHD myself. On this channel, I aim to educate and empower using evidence-based medicine and a root cause lens, looking beyond medication alone to better understand what's really driving ADHD symptoms. A lot of ADHD mornings go wrong before the day even really starts. A lot of people with ADHD wake up feeling foggy, flat, underpowered, or already behind. Their brain feels restless but not focused, tired but also stimulation seeking. And because most people don't understand what's actually happening here, they assume the issue is discipline. They may think they need more willpower or a stricter routine, or may just chalk it up as normal. What's often happening is that the ADHD brain wakes up understimulated and dysregulated, then starts looking for something to fix that as quickly as possible. That's why so many people end up reaching for their phone right away, or jumping into emails, or doom scrolling, or picking a fight, or online shopping, or chasing caffeine before they've even fully oriented to the day. The brain is looking for stimulation, and one of the most important things to understand about ADHD is that it's not just a focus problem, it's also a regulation problem. That includes regulating attention, regulating impulses, regulating motivation, and very often regulating dopamine. When dopamine is low or inconsistent, the brain tends to seek out novelty, urgency, intensity, or stimulation. So if you don't provide that stimulation intentionally, the brain will often go looking for it on its own. And usually it finds it in the wrong places. That's why morning movement is so powerful, because movement gives the ADHD brain a cleaner source of stimulation it was about to go chasing anyways. Before I get deeper into that, I want to talk about another piece of the puzzle that's really important here, which is circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is basically your body's internal clock. It helps regulate when you feel sleepy, when you feel alert, how your hormones fluctuate across the day, and how ready your brain and body feel to wake up in the morning and to wind down at night. A delayed circadian rhythm means that internal clock tends to run later than average. In simple terms, you naturally feel more awake later at night and less ready to wake up in the morning. The Mayo Clinic describes delayed sleep-wake phase as a pattern where sleep and wake timing are shifted later than usual, often by 2 hours or more. And this is more common in ADHD than a lot of people realize. Reviews in ADHD populations have found that delayed sleep phase, later chronotype, and delayed melatonin timing are all more prevalent in people with ADHD. One recent review noted that delayed sleep phase is one of the most common sleep-related patterns seen in ADHD, and that melatonin onset in adults with ADHD has been shown to be delayed by about 1.5 hours. So if you already have an ADHD brain that tends to struggle with regulation and your internal clock is also shifted later, mornings can feel especially hard. You're not just lazy or bad at mornings, and you're not just doing life wrong. In many cases, your brain and body are genuinely less ready to wake up and regulate early in the day. This also connects to something a lot of people with ADHD experience, which is revenge bedtime procrastination. This is when you stay up later than you know you should, even though you're tired, because it finally feels like the day is yours. Maybe it's the first time all day that no one is asking anything from you. Maybe it's the only quiet time you get. Maybe your brain finally feels awake at night and you don't want to give that up. For some people, that's partly behavioral. For some people, it's partly circadian, and for many people with ADHD, it's both. But the result is the same. You go to bed late, you get less sleep, your brain wakes up even more dysregulated the next morning, and now it's even more likely to start craving stimulation immediately. And that's one reason this cycle can feel so hard to break. Poor sleep makes dopamine regulation worse. Poor sleep makes executive function worse. It lowers emotional resilience, and it makes it much harder to start the day in a grounded, intentional way. Sleep problems are highly prevalent in ADHD, and recent reviews continue to show that sleep disruption can amplify core ADHD ADHD symptoms and functional impairment. And that brings us back to movement. Exercise and physical activity have been shown to support executive function in ADHD, including attention and inhibitory control. Reviews and meta-analyses published recently continue to support physical activity as a useful non-pharmacologic tool for improving executive function and ADHD-related symptoms. There's also evidence that exercise increases catecholamines like dopamine and norepinephrine, which is one reason it can improve alertness, focus, and mental organization. This does not mean movement is a magic fix, but it does mean that movement gives the brain something it genuinely needs early in the day, which is organized stimulation. And that phrase matters because the ADHD brain is usually going to look for stimulation one way or another. The question is whether you're giving it a clean, intentional source of stimulation or whether you're letting the world provide one for you. When the world provides it, it usually looks like screens, notifications, headlines, text messages, emotional content, urgency, or random novelty. When you provide it, it can look like movement. And those are two very different starts to the day. Movement helps shift the brain from passive craving into active regulation. It gives your system a wake-up signal. It increases alertness. It often improves mood. It helps many people feel more grounded in their body instead of immediately pulled outward by stimulation. And for a lot of ADHD brains, the right kind of stimulation is exactly what helps the nervous system to settle. That may sound counterintuitive, but it's very true. Without that signal, a lot of people feel internally restless all day long. They feel like they can't lock in. They feel more emotionally reactive. They have a harder time tolerating boredom. And they're more likely to chase stimulation in ways that don't actually make them feel better. This is also why the morning matters specifically. The first hour of the day is critical for creating positive momentum. If your day starts with stillness, poor sleep inertia, phone stimulation, and constant input, your brain often gets trained into reactive mode almost immediately. Attention gets pulled outward before you've really anchored into your body, your priorities, and your own nervous system. But if your day starts with movement, even briefly, you're giving the brain a very different signal. You're telling it to wake up, engage, and regulate. That's why I like movement so much as a morning ADHD tool. It's simple, practical, and it works with the brain instead of against it. Now, this does not mean you need a perfect morning routine. And I want to say this clearly because a lot of people with ADHD hear advice like this and immediately think, great, now I need to become the kind of person who wakes up at 5 a.m., does a full workout, journals, meditates, drinks green juice, and has my entire life together before sunrise. This is definitely not what I'm saying. This is not about becoming some hyper-disciplined morning person. This is about giving your brain the signal it needs early enough that it does not spend the rest of the morning trying to get that signal from less helpful places. And this is where systems matter a lot more than motivation. Personally, I've built my own morning setup around this idea. I meditate first, then when it's dark outside, I use a sad light for light exposure. And after that, I hop on my treadmill desk so movement happens automatically for me. And the point is not that everyone needs my exact routine. The point is that I've set up my environment in a way that makes the healthy thing easier and more automatic. I'm not depending on how motivated I feel that morning. I'm not relying on willpower, I'm relying on a system. And ADHD brains tend to do much better with systems like that. This is true for habits in general, but especially for morning habits. If you make movement depend on motivation, your brain will negotiate with you every single day. If you make movement part of the system, it becomes much easier. That could mean putting your shoes out the night before. It could mean setting your sad light where you'll actually use it. It could mean putting your phone in another room until after movement. It could mean using the same playlist every morning. It could mean attaching movement to something you already do, like meditation, coffee, or stepping outside. That's why I think automation is so helpful for ADHD. Healthy habits stick much better when the environment does some of the work for you. Now, another important important point here is that this does not need to be intense. It doesn't need to be a 45-minute workout. It can be a few songs in the kitchen while you dance around. It can be a 5 or 10-minute walk. It can be jogging around the block. It can be a few sets of stairs. It can be stretching, mobility, air squats, jumping jacks, or a quick treadmill walk. Or it can be walking your dog without looking at your phone. The best type of movement is not the most impressive one. It's the one you will actually do consistently. And for ADHD, that is a very important distinction, because if the plan is too ambitious, too complicated, or too dependent on feeling inspired, most people are not going to stick with it. Not because they're lazy, but because the friction is too high. So when I think about building this habit, I always come back to one line. The goal is not performance, the goal is signal. You're not trying to prove something, you're not trying to win the morning, you're just trying to send your brain a clear message early in the day. Here's your stimulation, here's your activation, here's your reset. And when the brain gets that signal, a lot of people notice they're less likely to seek stimulation in unhelpful ways later. They doom scroll less, they feel less edgy, they're less reactive, they have an easier time focusing. They feel less like the whole day is happening to them. There's also something important here around embodiment. A lot of people with ADHD live very much in their head. Their thoughts are fast, their attention is scattered, their emotions are fluctuating, and they often feel disconnected from their body. Movement helps bring you back into your body. It gives your attention somewhere physical to land. It helps anchor you. It helps you start the day from a more embodied place instead of a more mentally chaotic one. And that can make a real difference, not just for focus, but for emotional regulation as well. Because when the brain starts the day sleep deprived, understimulated, and immediately pulled into input, emotional resilience tends to be lower. When the brain starts the day with some movement, many people feel more steady. Not perfect, but steadier. One more thing I want to say here is that this is not all or nothing. If you miss a day, it does not mean the system failed. If all you do is 3 minutes, that still counts. If all you can manage is stretching and standing in front of your light, that still counts. If all you can do is walk around the block, that still counts. The goal is not perfection, the goal is progress. And in my experience, that mindset works much better for ADHD than trying to build some flawless routine that collapses the moment life gets hard. So if you want to make this stick, start smaller than you think you need to. 5 minutes, 1 lap around the block, a few sets of stairs, 10 squats and light exposure. Let that be enough. Because once your brain starts to feel the difference between mornings with movement and mornings without it, the habit gets much easier to reinforce. You stick to it because you notice your day genuinely goes better when you do. So if you enjoyed this video, I'd also recommend watching this video here on the top 3 foods to start your day with. Movement is a powerful part of the equation, but nutrition is also a critical part of supporting your brain first thing in the morning. And if you found this helpful, consider subscribing for more videos on ADHD.